Story number 1. The Silent Carriage. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in the heart of London, surrounded by the relentless pace of the city, I found comfort in the tangible, the sound of footsteps on cobblestone streets, the aroma of fresh bread from morning markets, and the steady rhythm of the underground trains below. But that Christmas Eve of 1930 changed everything I thought I knew about the unseen world. I'm Edward Bennett, a young journalist working for the London Gazette. My days were spent chasing stories, digging into the lives of Londoners, and occasionally uncovering the city's hidden secrets. Christmas was always a busy time, with festive events, charitable drives, and the heightened spirits that seemed to infuse the entire city. This year, however, a peculiar story caught my attention, one that would lead me to the heart of a haunted legend that had been whispered among Londoners for decades. The story revolved around the Royal Christmas Express, a lavish train service that ran from King's Cross Station to various destinations across the United Kingdom. Known for its opulent carriages, impeccable service, and festive decorations, the train was a favorite among holiday travelers. But in 1930, something inexplicable happened that cast a shadow over its pristine reputation. According to local lore, during one particularly harsh Christmas Eve, the Royal Christmas Express was caught in a severe snowstorm as it sped through the outskirts of London. The storm was relentless, the snow piling high against the windows and the wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. Amidst the chaos, the train experienced a sudden and unexplained mechanical failure, coming to an abrupt halt in the middle of nowhere, as the passengers scrambled to stay warm and find shelter within the carriages. An eerie silence descended upon the train. It was during this moment of stillness that the strange occurrences began. Passengers reported hearing faint, ghostly laughter echoing through the empty carriages. Some claimed to see shadowy figures of families long dead sitting silently in the luxurious compartments, their faces pale and lifeless, devoid of any sign of life. Others spoke of doors slamming shut on their own, objects moving without explanation, and a pervasive sense of dread that enveloped the entire train. The conductor, a man named Thomas Gray, was at the center of these reports. Desperate to maintain order, he attempted to reassure the frightened passengers, but his efforts seemed futile against the mounting fear and the supernatural events unfolding around him. By morning, the snowstorm had subsided, and the train was finally able to resume its journey. However, the damage had been done. The Royal Christmas Express emerged from the storm to find that all passengers and crew had vanished without a trace. The train was eerily empty, save for the lingering traces of those who had disappeared that night. Intrigued by the mystery and sensing a compelling story, I decided to investigate further. My inquiries led me to old archives, interviewing retired railway workers, and delving into the Royal Christmas Express's operational history. Most dismissed the tale as a ghost story born out of the fear and uncertainty that the storm had caused. However, a few, particularly the older generation, spoke with a knowing fear in their eyes, recounting stories passed down through the years about the haunted carriage. One name kept coming up: Carriage 7, a lavishly decorated family compartment that had become the epicenter of the ghostly phenomena. According to legend, the family who perished that night were a well-to-do couple, along with their 2 young children. Their sudden disappearance was never explained, and their tragic end left a lingering presence within the carriage, forever bound to relive their final moments each Christmas Eve. Determined to uncover the truth, I arranged to ride the Royal Christmas Express on the following Christmas Eve, hoping to witness the phenomena firsthand. The train was scheduled to make a special Christmas tour, a nod to its storied past, and I secured a first-class ticket with access to all carriages. As the train departed King's Cross, the festive decorations and warm ambience provided a stark contrast to the chilling tales I had heard. The first part of the journey was uneventful. Families laughed, children played with toys, and the scent of mulled wine filled the air. I settled into my compartment, setting up my recording equipment discreetly, determined to capture any unusual activity. The rhythmic clatter of the train and the gentle sway of the carriages lulled me into a sense of security. But as midnight approached, an unsettling stillness began to descend. The weather outside worsened, with the snowstorm intensifying unexpectedly. The train screeched to a halt, the lights flickering as the engines struggled against the heavy snowfall. Panic ensued among the passengers as the reality of the situation set in. The carriages, once filled with warmth and joy, now felt cold and oppressive. It was then that the first strange noises began. A faint, eerie laughter that seemed to echo from the empty carriages. I glanced around, trying to remain calm, but the atmosphere was thick with fear. The conductor, Thomas Gray, appeared at the entrance of my compartment, his face pale and drawn. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice wavering, "we are experiencing technical difficulties. Please remain calm and stay in your compartments until we resolve the issue." As hours passed, the strange occurrences became more frequent. Doors to empty carriages slammed shut with no apparent cause, and the temperature within the train dropped precipitously. Despite the heating systems working overtime, the laughter grew louder, more insistent, and passengers began to speak of seeing shadowy figures of a family seated in the opulent compartments, their faces ghostly and devoid of life. Compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity, I decided to investigate Carriage 7. Grabbing my coat and flashlight, I made my way through the darkened corridors, the sound of laughter guiding me toward the haunted compartment. As I approached, the door to Carriage 7 creaked open on its own, revealing the lavish interior adorned with Christmas decorations and a grand piano in the corner. Stepping inside, I was immediately struck by the cold, oppressive atmosphere. The carriage was impeccably decorated, every detail a testament to the family's wealth and taste. At the far end, the ghostly figures of the family sat in silence, their presence both tragic and unsettling. The mother, dressed in a flowing gown, gazed out the window with hollow eyes. The father, in a tailored suit, sat rigidly beside her, while the children, pale and expressionless, huddled together. "Hello," I called out softly, my voice barely breaking the silence. The family turned their heads in unison, their eyes meeting mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. The mother offered a faint, sorrowful smile, a gesture that seemed both welcoming and heartbreaking. "Welcome," she whispered, her voice echoing through the carriage. "Join us for Christmas." I took a hesitant step forward, but the air grew colder, the weight of their sorrow pressing down on me. "What happened here?" I asked, my voice trembling. The father looked at me, his expression one of eternal grief. "We were lost in the storm," he replied, his voice hollow, "trapped in this carriage, unable to leave." Before I could respond, the room seemed to shift, the carriages around us melting into the darkness as the train remained stuck in the storm. The laughter intensified, transforming into cries of anguish that filled the air. The ghostly family reached out to me, their hands passing through my own with a chilling coldness. Desperate to escape, I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut, locking me inside. The temperature plummeted further, my breath visible in the icy air. Panic surged through me as the spirits continued their silent plea for help, their presence overwhelming and suffocating, summoning every ounce of courage. I spoke to them. "I want to help you find peace. How can I assist you?" The mother reached out, her hand trembling as she touched my shoulder. "Remember us," she implored, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Honor our memory. Let us know that our story is told, so we are not forgotten." With that, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, the spirits slowly fading into the ether as a sense of calm washed over the carriage. The temperature returned to normal, and the sounds of the storm outside became a distant memory. I stood there for a moment, feeling a profound sense of relief and a deep connection to the tragic family whose story had been forgotten by time. The next morning, the storm had subsided, and the train was finally able to resume its journey. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the snow-covered landscape. As the Royal Christmas Express rolled into King's Cross Station, passengers disembarked with a mix of relief and awe, their experiences of the night lingering in their minds. I left the train with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to share the story of Carriage 7 and the haunted family that had been forgotten by history. My article, titled "The Silent Carriage," was published in the London Gazette, bringing attention to the tragic events of that Christmas Eve. The story resonated with readers, sparking discussions about the supernatural and the importance of remembering those who had been lost. Years later, the legend of the Royal Christmas Express and Carriage 7 remained a cherished tale among Londoners. Passengers still reported strange occurrences on Christmas Eve, and the story served as a poignant reminder of the thin veil between life and death, and the enduring power of memory and compassion. Every Christmas, as I sit by the fire with a cup of mulled wine, I reflect on that fateful night. The image of the ghostly family in Carriage 7 lingers in my mind, a testament to the tragic love and loss that bound their spirits to the train. It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, a story well told can bring peace to restless souls and ensure that their memories live on. And so, the tale of the Royal Christmas Express continues to be shared, a haunting yet beautiful story that intertwines with the festive spirit, reminding us to honor those who have passed and to cherish the memories that keep their spirits alive. The silent carriage stands as a symbol of love, loss, and the enduring hope that even the most tragic tales can find their resolution through remembrance and understanding. As the years go by, the story of Carriage 7 becomes more than just a ghost story. It becomes a part of London's rich tapestry of legends, a whisper of the past that echoes through the present, ensuring that the spirits of those lost on that Christmas Eve are never forgotten. Story number 2. The Phantom Express. Winter in the Midwest is unforgiving. The snow blankets everything in sight, turning familiar landscapes into eerie, silent expanses. I've always found solace in the rhythm of the trains that traverse these vast, frozen lands. There's something almost meditative about the steady clatter of wheels on tracks, the rhythmic chugging of the engine, and the fleeting glimpses of snow-covered fields through the window. But on Christmas Eve of 1990, my peaceful appreciation of trains turned into a nightmare that still haunts me to this day. I'm Nathan Mitchell, a railway enthusiast and freelance writer based in Chicago. Christmas has always been a special time for me, a chance to reconnect with family and friends, and to indulge in my passion for trains. That year, however, a strange series of events led me to uncover the terrifying truth behind the legend of the Phantom Express. It all started a few weeks before Christmas. I was researching for an article on unsolved mysteries of the railway, and the story of the Phantom Express caught my attention. According to local lore, every Christmas Eve since 1985, a mysterious train would appear on an unknown route, speeding through small towns with no scheduled service. Witnesses described a train moving at an impossible speed, its whistle piercing the night, and bright, flickering lights illuminating the darkness. Strangely, no one could identify the origin or destination of this phantom locomotive. Intrigued by the enigma, I decided to investigate further. I reached out to locals in various towns along the old Chicago-San Francisco route, where most sightings had been reported. Most people dismissed the tales as mere ghost stories or the result of heavy snowfall creating optical illusions. But a few, especially the older residents, spoke with a knowing fear in their eyes, recounting stories passed down through generations. One name kept coming up: Old Man Harris, a retired conductor who lived in a small town called Willow Creek. According to him, the Phantom Express was more than just a ghostly apparition. It was the restless spirit of a train that had met a tragic end decades ago. Harris's story was chilling. In 1965, a passenger train derailed in a blinding snowstorm, resulting in the loss of all on board. The survivors spoke of a train engulfed in whiteout conditions, unable to stop, careening through the night until it vanished without a trace. Since then, Every Christmas Eve, the Phantom Express reappears, as if stuck in an endless loop of its final, horrifying journey, determined to uncover the truth. I arranged to meet Old Man Harris. His house was a modest, weather-beaten structure on the outskirts of Willow Creek, surrounded by towering pines that creaked under the weight of heavy snow. Harris was in his late 70s, a stoic man with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. "You're here about the Phantom Express," he stated, his voice roughened by years of cold weather. "Most folks think it's just a tale to scare children." I nodded, taking a seat by the fireplace. "I want to understand what really happened." Harris sighed deeply, his gaze distant as he stared into the flames. It wasn't just a derailment. There was something more sinister at play that night, something that couldn't be explained by mere accident. He recounted the events of that fateful night, his words painting a vivid picture of chaos and despair. The train had been carrying a mix of passengers, families, businessmen, and even a few soldiers returning home from service. As the snowstorm intensified, visibility dropped to almost zero. The conductor struggled to maintain control, but the engine seemed to have a mind of its own, barreling forward with terrifying speed. People were scared. Harris continued, his voice barely above a whisper. They felt like the train was alive, like it had a purpose beyond just transporting people. When it finally derailed, it wasn't just metal and snow that scattered. It was souls. Those who perished became part of the train, bound to it forever. I felt a chill run down my spine. "So, the Phantom Express is their restless spirit." Harris nodded solemnly. "Every Christmas Eve, the storm returns, and with it, the train. It's like the spirits are trying to relive their final journey, unable to move on, determined to witness the phenomenon firsthand." I decided to spend Christmas Eve in Willow Creek. I arranged to stay at Harris's house, knowing that he would be there to guide me. As Christmas approached, the anticipation built, mixed with a growing sense of dread. On Christmas Eve, the sky was overcast, heavy with the promise of another storm. The wind howled through the pines, and the first flakes of snow began to fall. Harris and I prepared for the night, stocking up on supplies and setting up a base in his cozy living room. We sat by the fire, sharing stories and theories about the Phantom Express, trying to steel ourselves for what might come. As midnight approached, the temperature plummeted, and the snowstorm intensified. The wind howled like a chorus of lost souls, and the world outside seemed to dissolve into a blinding whiteout. Harris checked his watch, the hands inching closer to 12. "Stay vigilant," he warned. "The storm is reaching its peak." Just as the clock struck 12, a distant, haunting whistle pierced the night, followed by the unmistakable sound of a train speeding through the storm. Harris and I exchanged a tense glance, both of us knowing what was about to unfold. "We need to see it," I whispered, a mix of fear and excitement in my voice. We grabbed our coats and made our way outside, the cold biting through our layers. The howling wind made it difficult to see anything beyond a few feet, but the sound of the train grew louder, more distinct. Through the swirling snow, we caught sight of a train speeding through the storm, its lights blazing brightly against the darkness. "There it is," Harris said, his voice tense. "The Phantom Express." The train moved with an impossible speed, its whistle echoing through the night like a banshee's cry. The lights were bright, yet there was no sign of movement inside the carriages. As we watched, the train raced past, barely slowing down, its presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. But then, something even more disturbing happened. As the train sped away, we noticed a carriage that seemed to shimmer and fade, as if it were made of smoke. It appeared empty, yet I could swear I saw faint figures moving inside, ghostly apparitions of passengers, their faces etched with eternal sorrow and fear. The sight sent a shiver down my spine, and Harris grabbed my arm tightly. "We need to leave," he said urgently. "Don't get too close." But curiosity anchored me to the spot, my eyes fixed on the fading image of the ghostly carriage. The whistle continued to wail, a mournful melody that seemed to resonate with the pain of the lost souls aboard the Phantom Express. As quickly as it had appeared, the train vanished into the storm, leaving us alone in the silent aftermath. The snowstorm began to subside, the winds dying down as if the spirits had finally moved on. Harris and I stood in the clearing, the memory of the sighting etched deeply into our minds. "We saw them," I said quietly, "the souls of those who perished." Harris nodded, his expression a mix of sadness and resignation. "They're trapped, reliving their final moments every Christmas Eve. We can't help them, but we can honor their memory." We returned to the warmth of Harris's house, the events of the night lingering like a ghostly presence in our thoughts. The following day, I began writing my article, detailing the haunting experience and the tragic history of the Phantom Express. The story resonated with readers, sparking a renewed interest in the legend and the spirits that still wandered the snowy tracks each Christmas Eve. Years have passed since that fateful night in 1990, but the memory of the Phantom Express remains vivid in my mind. Every Christmas Eve, I think back to the haunting whistle, the ghostly figures, and the sorrowful spirits trapped in an endless loop of their final journey. The story serves as a reminder of the thin veil between life and death, and the lingering echoes of tragedy that can transcend time and space. The Phantom Express continues to be a legend, a chilling tale that intertwines with the festive spirit, reminding us that even in the midst of joy and celebration, the shadows of the past can reach out, forever entwined with the present. And as long as the snow falls and the winds howl, the ghost train of Christmas Eve will ride the tracks, a spectral reminder of lives lost and memories that refuse to fade into the night. Story number 3. Frozen Echoes. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in Anchorage, Alaska, amidst the relentless winter storms and the unyielding cold, I found comfort in the tangible, the sound of the train, the sight of the snow-covered landscapes, and the warmth of a roaring fireplace. But that Christmas of 1972 changed everything I thought I knew about the unseen world. I was 32, a freight conductor with the Northern Frontier Railway, tasked with transporting goods through some of the most remote and unforgiving terrains in Alaska. The job was demanding, often isolating, but it paid well and allowed me to provide for my wife, Marlene, and our 2 young children, Tommy and Sarah. Christmas was always a special time for our family, a rare period of joy and togetherness in the midst of my nomadic lifestyle. On December 24th, the weather forecast predicted a severe snowstorm, one of the worst in years. The forecast was accurate. Thick, relentless snow began to fall as we prepared for our journey from Anchorage to Fairbanks. The train, aptly named the Northern Star, was a lifeline for many, carrying essential supplies and hopeful passengers eager to reunite with loved ones for the holidays. We loaded the last of the freight and secured our carriages, double-checking the engines and communication systems. Marlene and the kids were in the sleeper compartment, their excitement palpable as they decorated the small space with handmade ornaments and a tiny artificial tree. The station master gave us a stern warning about the approaching storm, advising caution and preparedness. "Stay vigilant," he said, his eyes shadowed with concern. "This storm isn't like the others. Visibility will drop, and the tracks will be treacherous." I nodded, offering a reassuring smile to Marlene and the children. "Don't worry, we'll be fine. The crew is experienced, and we have everything we need to get through this." As the train began to move, the familiar rhythm of the wheels on the tracks and the steady hum of the engines provided a comforting backdrop. The first few hours passed uneventfully, with the landscape gradually transforming into a monochromatic expanse of white. The storm intensified, snow piling high against the windows and reducing visibility to mere feet. By midnight, we were deep in the wilderness, surrounded by a sea of white that seemed endless. The howling wind outside was a constant reminder of nature's might, and the temperature inside the train plummeted, despite the heaters working overtime. It was then that the train came to an abrupt halt. "What's the matter?" I asked the engineer, who was frantically tapping on the control panel. "We've lost power," he replied, his voice tinged with panic. "The storm's knocked out the lines. We're stuck here." Marlene's voice echoed from the sleeper compartment. "Are you okay, honey?" "Yeah, just a little shaken up," I responded, trying to mask my growing anxiety. "We'll figure it out." Hours passed in a tense silence, the storm raging outside like an angry beast. We tried to contact headquarters, but the radio was dead, the storm having severed all communication lines. The temperature continued to drop, and the train's interior grew colder by the minute. It was around 2 a.m. when we first heard it, the faint sound of laughter, echoing through the empty carriages. First, I dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on our minds, but the sound persisted, growing louder and more distinct. "Did you hear that?" Marlene whispered from her compartment, her voice trembling with fear. I nodded, my heart pounding. "Yeah, probably just the wind. Let's try to stay calm." But as the hours dragged on, the laughter turned into eerie giggles and then into desperate cries. The sounds seemed to emanate from the passenger carriages, where there was no one else on board. Panic began to set in among the passengers, with murmurs of fear spreading like wildfire. We decided to investigate, hoping to quell the rising hysteria. As we made our way through the darkened train, the sounds grew louder, and the air felt thick with an oppressive presence. The lighting flickered sporadically, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Reaching the passenger car, we found the doors locked from the inside. The laughter was now deafening, accompanied by the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth. I pounded on the door, calling out, "Is anyone there? Open up." Silence answered me, followed by a sudden, bone-chilling scream that echoed through the carriage. The doors flew open with a force that sent us stumbling backward. There, in the dim light, stood a figure, a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothing, her face pale and eyes hollow. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her voice echoing unnaturally. I took a step forward, my voice wavering. "We were stuck here because of the storm. We need help." She stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, she turned and began to walk down the aisle, her footsteps silent yet filled with purpose. I followed, my heart racing, until we reached the end of the carriage where the walls seemed to close in on us. "Stay away," she shouted, her voice a mix of fear and anger. "You shouldn't be here." Before I could respond, she vanished, leaving me alone in the empty carriage. The temperature dropped further, and the whispers returned, now filled with sorrow and desperation. It was then that I realized the truth. We weren't alone on this train. The spirits of those who had perished in past storms were still here, trapped in an endless loop of fear and loss. Desperate to find answers, I returned to my compartment and tried to calm Marlene and the other passengers. "We need to stay together and keep warm," I urged. "There's no way out, so let's try to support each other." But the presence of the spirits continued to escalate. The laughter and crying became a constant backdrop, an ever-present reminder of the train's dark history. I delved into the train's archives, discovering old records of accidents and disappearances that had occurred on similar routes. It seemed that every Christmas Eve, the Northern Frontier Railway had experienced unexplained phenomena, with trains getting stuck in snowstorms and passengers vanishing without a trace. One night, as the clock struck 3, the entire train was plunged into darkness. The only light came from the flickering emergency lanterns, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The sounds of laughter and crying were deafening, echoing through every carriage. "We need to keep moving," I said, my voice barely audible over the chaos. "We can't let the spirits control us." Marlene nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "What can we do?" I remembered an old legend my father used to tell me about appeasing restless spirits, lighting candles and saying prayers for peace. It was a long shot, but it was all we had. Gathering the passengers, I handed out candles and led a small prayer, hoping to bring some sense of calm to the terrified group. As we lit the candles and recited the prayers, the atmosphere began to change. The oppressive presence seemed to lift slightly, the sounds of laughter and crying softening into mournful whispers. Maybe they're looking for peace, I suggested, trying to make sense of it all. If we honor their memory, maybe they'll find the closure they need. For a moment, it seemed to work. The candles flickered gently, and the air grew warmer. The sounds of the spirits faded, replaced by a serene silence that enveloped the train. We sat together in the passenger carriages, the flickering candlelight casting a warm glow on our faces. But the peace was short-lived. As the clock struck midnight, the laughter returned, louder and more insistent than before. The temperature plummeted once again, and the spirits reappeared, their presence more aggressive and desperate. "Why won't you leave us alone?" one of the spirits cried out, her voice filled with anguish. I stood up, determination replacing fear. "We honored your memory. Please, let us help you find peace." The spirits hesitated, their spectral forms wavering between hope and despair. Slowly, one by one, they began to fade, their cries turning into whispers of gratitude. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the train seemed to regain its warmth and light. As dawn broke, the storm began to abate, the snow ceasing to fall as if the spirit's torment had been finally quelled. The train started to move again, the engines roaring to life as we continued our journey through the snowy wilderness. When we finally reached Fairbanks, the sun was shining brightly, melting the remnants of the storm and illuminating the landscape with a golden glow. The passengers disembarked, their faces reflecting a mix of relief and awe at the night's events. I returned to my compartment, exhausted but hopeful. Marlene entered, her eyes shining with gratitude. "We did it, Sam. We helped them find peace." I nodded, a sense of fulfillment washing over me. "Yes, we did. Maybe now, no one else will have to experience what we went through." Years later, the story of that Christmas Eve aboard the Northern Star Express became a local legend, a testament to the power of compassion and the enduring human spirit. The Northern Frontier Railway implemented new safety measures and commemorative practices, ensuring that the memories of those lost were honored each year. I never forgot that night, the eerie laughter, the sorrowful cries, and the haunting presence of the spirits trapped in the snow. It taught me that even in the most desolate and unforgiving places, there is room for empathy and understanding. The frozen echoes of that train still linger in my mind, a reminder of the thin veil between life and death, and the enduring quest for peace amidst the storm. Every Christmas, as the snow begins to fall and the night grows cold, I find myself reflecting on that night, grateful for the chance to have helped those lost souls find their way. The memory of the silent laughter and the crying spirits remains a poignant reminder that sometimes the greatest horrors lie not in the darkness itself, but in the unresolved pain that echoes through the frozen wilderness. And so, the legend of the Northern Star Express lives on, a ghostly tale that serves as both a cautionary story and a beacon of hope, forever entwined with the silent whispers of the Alaskan snow.